Oh, can you hear me?
I know you.
Yeah, not bad. There's a certain irony with a crypto conference not supporting a crypto driver. How's it going, Jet 86? So we've got first couple of questions in. So first one, maybe it's a big question, but can you explain the security of the OMG network?
Okay.
So,
do you want me to start, Jake? Or?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, so yeah, what is the security of the OMG network? So from a very high level, if you look at our Plasma design, the promise is that you always can exit your funds if the chain should become unsafe. That is the basic promise of the network, because we, as the operator, we could cheat, we could include invalid transactions and try to exit them to the root chain. But the way our network is constructed, that should never happen, because if that happens, the watchers would flag that and would advise all users to exit. And there should be sufficient time for people to realize this and exit their funds safely before the chain becomes insolvent, right? Before the operator actually gets his queue and is able to exit the funds. Does that answer your question, Jim? Sure, go ahead.
Jim Dawson, day's going very well, thank you. I hope yours is too.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. Take your time.
So, Jet86, maybe as a quick follow-up, what needs to remain available up for people to exit, just a watcher? Yeah, the easiest way to perform an exit from the OMG network back to Ethereum is with the UTXO information that's held by a watcher. You don't need a watcher. It is possible to do it without it, but it's a lot more difficult. So the easiest way is to get the certain properties of the UTXO, such as the permission and TX bytes, and use that to perform an exit to get your funds back. But if for any reason there isn't a watch available, there is, of course, a mechanism to retrieve your funds.
So maybe to add to what Jake just said. So it's really about data availability, and a watcher ensures that you have data availability, and it also helps a user to exit the funds. It provides the right information, so you can push the right information to the smart contracts and basically start the exit. Yeah, so the question is, with proof of stake, there was an easy follow-up logic why the block producers will not act in a wrong way, right? Because they get punished, they get slashed. But with only one block producer, this is harder. I'm just reformulating the question a little bit. Yeah, and this goes back to the way our plasma is constructed. I would say the negative consequences, so that the funds are always secure, right? Because of this exit game that everyone has to play. Even if the operator becomes evil, he has to go through the same mechanism that users also go through. And I guess the economic downside is more implicit for an operator. If you would, there would be two ways that this happens. Either an operator gets compromised or for some reason becomes malicious. But in both cases, there's no direct punishment for the operator. I think the consequences are more implicit, that users would use trust in that operator to actually do its job, and therefore nobody would use that operator probably after such an event occurred. Does that answer your question?
I mean, this is the point of the watcher. The watcher's there available. It's open source. It's available for anybody to download. And what that enables you to do is to validate that the operator is acting honestly. So yeah, there's mechanisms in place to kind of hold us to account as a single block producer.
Mm-hmm. Jim says, but with only one operator, that would mean that no one would be able to use the OMG network anymore. Yeah, that is correct. So if for instance, any of the scenarios would take place, and then everybody would exit the funds, and no one after that would become an operator again, then it is as you describe, yeah. But theoretically, anyone else could become an operator as well, or spin up their own plasma chain.
Thanks for the question, Jim.
Thanks. Have you seen any of the talks, Jake?
No, I haven't really. I've been following up with the launch and keeping an eye on things and making sure that everything's working how it should be. Have you seen many?
No, I haven't. That's a good one. What keeps you awake as a security team? Cool. There's a lot of things. Anything in specific you have in mind, Jim?
Coffee. So really, I guess there's two large attack surfaces for us. The first one is, of course, on the root chain on Ethereum, because smart contracts are the bridge that connects the Ethereum network into the Plasma network, or the OMG network that we run Plasma. So the services that we have is one with the smart contracts themselves. So that's when people deposit their funds in, can they get them back? And the way that we control how that works is through a couple of different audits, which perhaps Gerhard can talk about in just a moment. And the second area of attack surface for us is the public-facing APIs that we have. So that would be the operator, which is the child chain, and the watcher nodes as well. So we want to make sure that we can keep our services up, and we also need to make sure that we keep the funds that are deposited into those smart contracts secure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the OMG network is a relatively complex system, and it's important to keep in mind what are the most critical things to focus on first. I think we have prioritized the smart contracts at the end of last year, beginning of this year. So we did 2 audits with 2 independent companies that almost took 3 months to complete. And there's a lot of effort that obviously went into those. And then after that, we also, the child chain and the watcher are very critical components in our network that need to work and that need to be production ready. And up until now, we have focused on those to get them to a certain standard. We also have client libraries. We have a mobile wallet. We have a web wallet. All of these things need to be resilient as well. So there's a lot of components in place that need to be, secure. And actually, one of the next things that we are planning is to launch a public bug bounty, because we want to invite researchers to look at our stuff and find bugs, so we can make things even better, and provide the counter incentive for them to work with us constructively. Yeah. Then going forward, I think formal verification of some of the contract properties is also something that we want to do at some point. We've already drawn out some of those properties, and we're currently looking at the most meaningful way to verify them. This is something that we are going to look into in the near future.
formal verification, I guess that follows on from the smart contracts having the properties that and validation of that. Do you want to talk about that process, Gerhard?
Yeah, I can. Okay, so formal verification is a method to verify that a property of a computer program always holds or is never violated, and there's a mathematical proof for that. So you can do those things for smart contracts because smart contracts are relatively small programs, and formal verification is especially applicable for such programs. For the child chain and the watcher, for instance, this would be impossible because they're so complex and also their environment is so diverse. But smart contracts are relatively self-contained, execution environments where they're running. So this is something that is specifically lends itself to do formal verification. There's one thing though that's formal verification is very hyped and a lot of people are curious about it and want to have it for their contract systems. It's just it can be a potentially very expensive exercise to actually get those done, and also to get the specifications right, because if your specifications are not correct, then you maybe prove things that are not really accurate, that don't really translate into proving that your system is secure. That's kind of that. What was wrong with the original plan with POS? Can you be more specific? I'm not sure I have the background on that. Do you understand the question, Jake?
No, I'm not entirely sure that. Jim, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that. So the plan was to go from POA to POS. Now there's some proof of guarantee instead, as I understand it. So yeah, that's correct. The intention is to go to proof of guarantee at the moment. So with proof of guarantee, what we're doing is incentivizing people to run their own watches. So what will happen is they will run the watcher software, which checks for blocks that have been submitted to the root chain. They will then pull the Merkle root from the operator, and then they validate that the transactions that are supposed to have happened have indeed actually happened. And with that, there's the implementation of the game theory to ensure that there's no Byzantine events gets reported to a user. The running proof of stake is actually, we think, more expensive for users, because for every submit block that is pushed out to the root chain, the user incurs quite a significant gas fee for that, potentially. So proof of guarantee will actually work out to be cheaper for users to validate that the network is healthy and performing how it should be, and result in a lower cost of operating as well. but then it would come at the cost of decentralization. So it must be very much cheaper. Well, there has to be the initial number of transactions as well initially to make it worthwhile. So if we had, say, 100 validators, or 100 block producers running at the moment, that cost is going to be significantly higher because there just isn't the transactions on the network at the moment, while we're still in the process of bootstrapping, bringing on partners and everything else. So yes, it is cheaper at the moment. Do we have any public proof of guarantee documents at the moment? We do internally. I'm not sure if they are ready for release at the moment. Gerhard, do you know if we have any proof of guarantee documentation that's publicly available yet?
I think we are finalizing the designs. I believe we have shared with some partners to get feedback, and that's kind of where things are. I think we are looking to make it publicly available in the near future, but I don't think we have a date for it yet. So that's what I know.
Soon.
Soon, yeah.
We have had some initial feedback from potential stakers, potential validators rather in this case, who would be running the Watcher with the proof of guarantee software. And their initial feedback is that the documentation is very good. They think that the design has been well thought out, and they are positive for this direction of going to proof of guarantee. Yeah, looking forward to sharing it with you as soon as we can. Is it an OMG invention? I mean, all of these sorts of things are, you stand on the shoulders of giants when you build anything. And if you look at the original Bitcoin white paper, that's built on distributed computing problems from Lamport back in the 60s or 70s. So you always kind of take influence and inspiration from other things that are happening, and that's no different here. So we've looked at how the proof of guarantee staking game is going to work, and that's been influenced on other game theory implementations that we have. And one of those clear ones is the Plasma protocol, which has the exit game theory implementation. So yes, it's influenced by other things that have happened within the rest of the Ethereum community, and we've made that work for incentivizing people to run our Watcher software. Does that answer your question, Jim? Have security
There's a troll in the chat.
I think I know who that troll is too. Yes, we have slept. Since the launch, we've experienced only one exception in our code across all of our products. So that's the child chain, the security watcher, the info watcher, the web wallet, the block explorer. We've had in the regions of thousands of users over the past 24 hours, and we've only experienced one exception. So I'm happy with how that's been so far.
But anyone who is not a madman and would not be nervous when they launch a big smart contract system on mainnet. Yeah. I don't know anyone who.
Can you expand on what the exception was? Sorry, Gerhard, were you saying something there?
No, I was finished. You can go.
Okay, so Jet86 asks, can you expand on what the exception was? Yes, it was to do with the way that a query was made to the informational watchers database. I don't have the exact details, but it was classed as a minor bug and something that was not going to be impacting users in any way. I think we have a fix out already, and it's going to be rolled into 1.0.0. So one of the things that we have enjoyed over the past year or so since we've been running public testnets is a whole range of bugs and exceptions. So I remember from when we launched our software at EggCon in Sydney, we had real users trying to build their own integrations on top. We've had other gaming providers such as Horde, and what that's meant is that all those real transactions that we've had coming through have helped us to surface potential problems way before we actually hit the mainnet stage. So this mainnet release process has actually been relatively smooth and drama-free, which is exactly how a release should be, boring and straightforward, really, from a technical perspective.
Yeah, I guess it helped that we already deployed the contracts in April also. So
yeah,
that's a big piece.
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest causes of exceptions that we've had recently is because we've been running our software on Ropsten, and the block production interval has been varying from a standard 10 to 15 seconds right up to 20 minutes, half an hour. And we've configured our software so that if there is a problem with the root chain, we know about it straight away. So what that meant is that we were some of the first in the community to be aware that there has been problems with the testnet underneath, and that was Ropsten in this case.
I have a question for you, Jake.
Sure.
Do you think there was any value of actually running our testnets on Ropsten, a relatively unreliable testnet, versus, for instance, WinKP?
I think there was, because firstly, I mean, we were running on WinKP beforehand, and WinKP, of course, is a POA network, and we are expecting our plasma blocks, to be able to be mined. And with that mining process, we have a gas selection mechanism that ensures that we pay as little ether as possible to push our plasma block to the root chain. So we had a validation of that mechanism on a proof of work network. And secondly, it also validated that our assumptions around what would happen in the event that the root chain is not available was actually clarified. So our software performed exactly how it should have done in the event that if the Ethereum network would be unavailable. So I think there was value for those two reasons. I have a question for you, Gerhard. How do you feel about DeFi security, specifically around things like stablecoin issuance, say with Maker, and borrowing and lending with Compounds, Dharma, all the rest of them?
I think it's super interesting. Money Legos are kind of my side project at the moment, because I'm interested in finance in general. And then I think DeFi is just, it just mixes a few very interesting things together. And also the technology on how just blockchains work, plus the traditional financing things that you can do, like lending and borrowing and margin trading and things like that. It's a very interesting. That's a very interesting new phenomenon that hasn't existed before and has very interesting mechanics. So it's super, super interesting.
Yeah.
But it's also a bit dangerous. So don't put all your savings into smart contracts. That's my advice.
One of the talks I really enjoyed from DEF CON last year in Osaka was the, are they called UMA? It's the group of people that are building synthetic derivatives on top of Ethereum. I think that's a really powerful thing. Are you on mute?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Synthetics, or is it a...
No, UMA, I believe that they're called. And derivatives can really unlock different sources of value, because you can open a derivative position on, say, something like, well, if we have an on-chain oracle, then we can look at things like, well, what is the Bitcoin dominance percentage going to look like, and what that means for the wider DeFi kind of economy is that you have.
Is that like a prediction market, or?
It could be, yeah. Yeah, it's just a way to unlock value, and to further expand the DeFi economy. What's going to be interesting is how those are going to be regulated, if at all. And I guess that's going to be something interesting for like chain analytics companies who are going to look at the proceeds and the results of these sorts of derivatives, be it something that looks maybe like an option, and see that if you try to bring that back into an exchange, are you going to be liable at that point for tax in your jurisdiction? I mean, there's a whole range of questions that are going to be have to be answered around that.
Yeah, it's just this space wouldn't anywhere near where it is with, like, if there were any sort of regulations, right? It can only move that fast because there's no seat belts.
I think that there are some in place with seatbelts.
Yeah.
On the whole, I agree with you.
Yeah.
There's like, if you look at some of the stablecoin issuers, for example, I know some of them have like FDIC insured accounts for USD. So there are issuers that are playing by the traditional finance rules and still issuing assets that are backed by traditional fiat currency. But it's when you get into the more kind of exotic stuff that the seatbelts aren't there quite so much, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that what I've meant is that there isn't just like a standard seatbelt that you can take on, because the technology is just so different, right? Especially if you don't control everything and things are decentralized. You just things work just differently.
Sure. It's getting quiet on the question side.
Yeah. So, Jake, do you think what will happen to Bitcoin? Do you think that the way that Bitcoin will be transacted in the future will happen on the Bitcoin network, or will it happen on another network? And which network is that?
That's an interesting question. So, of course, there have been efforts to speed up the ability to move Bitcoin around natively on its own chain, notably most with Lightning. What's quite interesting at the moment is looking at the various different wrapped Bitcoin offerings that are available. WBTC, TBTC, one of which is like a custodial service, and one of them, I believe, is decentralized. There's some sort of bridge between the two, with a smart contract actually controlling the minting.
You mean TBTC, or?
Yes, I believe that's the one. And if those are issued directly as ERC20 tokens, which they are, then instantly by depositing your Bitcoin into that bridge, and for the smart contract to mint those tokens, then you can then deposit them directly into the Anitigo network. So you're able to transact a lot more of that value for a much lower cost than doing it either natively on the Bitcoin chain, or even on Ethereum. So will people want to use that? I don't know. It all depends on the offerings that are available on the chain that you're moving to. So within the moving that to Ethereum kind of makes sense with all the DeFi offerings that are available. And if you want to move coins around on Ethereum, then the OMG network is the cheapest way to move that around. So that's definitely one such possibility that we could be seeing over the next year or so. How do you see that playing out, Gerhard, with Bitcoin? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I would think that the Bitcoin network itself does not lend itself to a lot of transactions, right? I mean, if you just want to hodl your Bitcoin and just never use it, then it's safest to leave it there. But I can see how people and organizations will want to use BTC without actually waiting an hour for 3 block confirmations. You want to just use it in some way. And I think some of the bridges that they've recently built are very, very interesting from a security perspective. So I think it's a pretty cool area. That will see a lot more usage, I think, and a lot more people trying to build something there.
Have you been exploring lending and borrowing within Ethereum?
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a couple of interesting projects. I kind of like to read the actual code, so I really understand how those things work. Also in terms of how they manage liquidity and what kind of price oracles they use and so on and so forth. So really understanding the mechanics. Yeah, so one of the things I've been looking at is AAV. I think they're one of the biggest biggest DeFi projects, and they have lending and borrowing and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I like how the risk profile works for a lot of this decentralized lending, because loans are over collateralized, which means that you need 150% of a certain asset in order to receive 100%. So what that means is that the position that you've taken is within crypto assets. Crypto assets are inherently volatile. But it always means that a borrower can't actually default. So from a safety perspective, I like how that's implemented.
So actually, when in March the Black Thursday happened, actually even the 50% was a problem for some of the DeFi platforms, because there was just no liquidity and everything was just plunging. So over the course of 2 or 3 days, it was really, even that was difficult to liquidate positions. And yeah.
I suppose as well is that around that time, because of the congestion on Ethereum, it's going to be harder for you to recollateralize your positions back up to somewhere that's far safer than the margin call as well.
Yes,
And
also the liquidity is just stuck in places. So you have huge slippage in various places, and you just like transaction fees skyrocket and all of that stuff. So.
I guess it takes these sorts of events to really kind of reaffirm to everybody working in this industry that the technology is just so nascent. You know, we're still so early on with everything that's happening, and yeah, it's exciting times for an engineer, because it means that solving problems of scaling Ethereum and making sure that the services that we build are reliable and secure are actually solving real world problems that we have now.
Yeah, I can agree with that, Jake.
Last few minutes. No worries, Jim. Thanks for your questions. When's the salamander session?
The rock session.
Oh, cool. I'll drop in for that as well.
Bring some salamanders.
I'll bring some rocks, some patience, and some salamanders. Who's doing that session? Is it Jet and Nabalu?
Mm-hmm. This should be fun.
Thanks, guys. Catch you next time.
See you guys. Bye.